Hello, this is Hugh Coakley from the Guildford Dragon News, and we have the great pleasure today of talking to Keith Witham, the newly elected Guildford Borough Councillor on the for the Purbright ward. Congratulations, Keith! Thank you ever so much for joining us.
That's a pleasure. Thank you.
Keith, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you think you bring to the council and why you wanted to get elected to serve on the borough for Purbright?
Well, I know Purbright very well indeed, having already been the Surrey County Councillor for Walpolston, which includes Purbright, for the last 9 years. So I know a lot of people there have been involved with a lot of local issues in Purbright. And I think part of the pitch when I was asking to be elected is to become, if you like, a single point of contact for residents. Often people don't know exactly which council does what. And so they've got one councillor, they can come to me on any issue and I'll either be able to deal with it or I can point them in the right direction. So that single point of contact, I think, is quite important for people. And okay. There was a predecessor of mine, Mike Nevins, who also held both roles. So, yeah, there is precedence for that.
Okay. So what are the issues in Purbright that you would focus on?
Well, if I say that 2 days after the election, the first meeting that I had at Guildford Borough Council was with the managing director at GBC, because there's been a long-standing concern and issue of illegal burning of waste at the Stony Castle site, affecting a lot of residents, particularly in the Vapory Lane area, when burning is going on, blowing noxious fumes across parts of Purbright. Surrey County Council has prosecuted successfully in the past, but that hasn't stopped the burning, because the person prosecuted and found guilty at court did not take the necessary actions to stop access to the land and stop the burning. That is now with Guildford Borough Council to be enforced. So I had a long briefing with the head of enforcement at GBC, having raised it with the managing director, just what is going on, what can be done. Now, there is enforcement action taking place. So what I can say publicly and what the council can say publicly is very limited right now, apart from giving residents an assurance that GBC is doing as much as it can do. It is taking action. It has set aside a budget of £120,000 for enforcement on this one site, which is quite a substantial sum of money. And what I've said to residents is, as soon as I am able to let them know anything else publicly, then both I and the council will do so. GBC has issued a statement, which I'm sending to residents, just to make sure that people are aware that the issue is up there, it has got attention, it is being dealt with.
Okay, so illegal dumping there at Stony Castle is an important issue, and that's come up. It's a long-standing issue in Purbright, I think.
Yes.
What other issues will you be thinking about?
Well, I think locally, planning is always a concern that people have. In Purbright, we're fairly fortunate because the village does have, as well as obviously the green belt, we have a lot of other protections in terms of planning protections. There is the special protection area. There are the ranges at Ash and Purbright. So large scale building and developments, frankly, isn't possible, but there are always concerns. One of the things I've already taken up with the relevant officers at GBC is that when people make individual planning applications, it's taking far too long for Guildford to actually make a decision. I mean, there are about 750 planning applications in the system in Guildford at the moment, double what it was last year. I think everybody basically had lockdown to deal with, and now that is easing. More people are wanting to get on with things. But the amount of time just for simple things like certificates of lawful development, which is not planning, but it's am I okay to do this with my house, are taking far too long. So I've been taking up residents' concerns on individual cases, and will press for that to be improved on a Guildford-wide basis.
Okay, so Keith, what are you've been sort of politically involved for quite some time. What are the sort of qualities you bring to the Borough Council, and of course to the Surrey County Council?
Well, I continue with my role as the Surrey County Councillor, and in that I've been very fortunate, because just last week at the annual meeting I was appointed to the Surrey Police and Crime Panel, which is representative of all of the districts and boroughs in Surrey plus the county, which its main purpose is to hold to account both the Police and Crime Commissioner and the Chief Constable for Surrey regularly as to what they are doing. Now that's a new involvement for me, so that will be very interesting. But I was also reappointed to the County's Communities Committee, which scrutinises things like the Surrey Fire and Rescue Service, environmental issues, highways, which is always something that people are interested in. So I'll continue to do that. But on a Guildford basis, I was appointed both to the Licensing Committee, which again is a new activity I haven't been involved with before. But I mean, licensing might sound pretty dry to some people. It's things like licensing taxi cabs, gambling venues, and things like pavement licenses. But at the bottom of all of that comes public safety. And so I will look forward to being involved with that. And on a Pirbright basis, I've also been asked, and I have accepted, to join the group that is organised by Guildford Borough Council that is dealing with the military covenant, particularly in Pirbright, because there are about 750 residents who are in the forces and their families who live in the parish of Pirbright at ATC Pirbright. So anything I can do to help those residents, as well as everyone else, I'd be pleased to do so. And I've had some contacts with ATC Pirbright, but being involved in things more regularly, I think will help.
Okay, so you say now, as I mentioned in my introduction, you're not only a Pirbright Borough Councillor, but you're a Walpolston County Councillor. I mean, that's a huge job. That's a really huge job. Is one person, I think it's called double hatting, is one person over these two jobs, are they being spread a little thinly?
No, I think the first and most important point is that anyone who is a councillor in any role needs to enjoy it. And I've always enjoyed it, because it's dealing with residents, it's trying to sort out individual issues, but it's then looking at wider issues either in the county or in the borough to see how we can improve things both for the borough and the county, but also how those things have an impact on the area that you're representing. In practicalities, most Surrey County Council meetings are held during the daytime, and most Guildford Borough Council meetings are held in the evening. So actually, in terms of time clash, there isn't a lot of problem being able to fit in both of those commitments. But the key thing is always that I enjoy doing it, because you get satisfaction out of helping residents and looking at those issues that affect our area.
What sort of time do you spend on GBC? What sort of time do you spend on Surrey County Council? Just to give our readers an idea of a time commitment that a borough councillor would have and a Surrey County councillor would have.
Well, as far as Surrey Council is concerned, I would reckon, because as I said, I've done it now for 9 years, I would reckon that about probably about 20 hours a week, 20 or 25 hours a week, spread over 7 days a week, would be about average, because that's not only attending meetings, it's looking at the emails that I get or correspondence, it's going out and seeing things. So about 20 hours plus. With my huge experience of having been a borough councillor now for over 2 weeks, I can't really give you a time estimate. I know that, you know, in the last couple of weeks, I have had quite a few discussions with GBC council officers, really as briefings for their benefit, but also my benefit, just getting to know not only what GBC does, which I have a reasonable grasp of, but also the internal workings, if you like. I've been to Millmead in Guildford council offices a couple of times, so I don't know the time scale. It probably won't be hugely more, apart from those meetings that I mentioned, like the main committee being licensing, but also, yes, being involved with colleague discussions within the Conservative group, and also you know, dealing with residents. But then I'm dealing with residents anyway by being their county councillor. So this comes back to my original point about, if you like, being a single point of contact, being a double hatter, as it's called, which I think actually is of benefit to people. Because if something isn't a GBC issue or isn't a Surrey County Council issue, I can deal with it or deal with it anyway if it's one of those two. If it's not, I can still pass the query on to whoever is relevant.
I mean, it would appear, I guess, that you have the time, but is such a system, does it preclude those who are younger, possibly, who have to work during the day, you know, who have childcare, family care issues? It does seem to be quite the time commitment you're talking about, you know, between sort of 30 and 40 hours a week, and I don't, you know, and you're not on the executive of Surrey or GBC, which again would involve another huge commitment. What's your thoughts about local councils excluding?
Yeah, I wouldn't, Hugh, I wouldn't over-egg it to say 30 to 40 hours a week. I am guessing the two combined is probably 25 to 30 hours a week, but that is spread, as I said, over 7 days a week. Okay. We're talking on Bank Holiday Monday, which I'm happy to do, as you are, and you know, sort of, I've never found it a problem. I retired from full-time work about 4 years ago, but up until then, I was chairman of one of the committees at Surrey County Council covering adult social care. Now, that was a large committee. I did that while I was working full-time. And yes, it is an intrusion into your personal life. Sometimes you have to allocate time, and we're all torn between working commitments or family commitments. You know, the most difficult word in the English language, I've always found, is the word no. Because you occasionally have to politely but firmly say no. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to be involved with that. Because yes, you can become involved in more and more and more. But actually, I think from my perspective, if I concentrate, my first and most important role is to represent the people of the local area that I'm elected to represent. And I do that, as all councillors do, mainly through the committees that you serve on. There are full council meetings, and they tend to be more staged events, more formal events. So it's often through the committees that you actually get a lot of work done. And I have to say, it's often done on a cross-party basis. The political disagreements don't often come up at committees. They tend to...
The Conservatives are the third largest party now in Guildford Borough Council, so you're going to be in opposition. what areas, Keith, will you be pushing the R4GV Lib Dem administration on? What sort of things will you be particularly thinking that they should do better or improve on?
Well, I think that they do need to look at the whole issue of planning, because there was a large hoo-ha a couple of years ago when the borough plan was approved, with a lot of unrealistic promises made by both the Lib Dems and the Guildford Residents' Party representatives. You see, a lot of what councils do, there is a limited amount of choice, but a lot of what councils do, they do because they have legal obligations placed on them by Parliament. And so, particularly in planning, yes, there are local choices to be made, but legal obligations in all sorts of things press far more heavily on what councils decide or don't decide. I mentioned earlier, in terms of local planning applications, the fact that people are having to wait a very long time just for simple, straightforward, small planning applications for their own one property, it is something that the council do need to improve on. And if it means employing more staff to get more planning officers so that backlog can be cleared, that's what needs to happen.
Okay, last question, Keith. As I said, the Conservatives are now in opposition, the third largest group after many years in the position of leadership there. Is this the way of things to come, or will the Conservatives make a comeback?
Well, I think that the Conservatives will always make a comeback, because any political situation and elections have cycles. I've been involved with local issues and with political activity for many years, and there are cycles. At the last borough council elections, which was 2 years ago, there were two things which gravitated against the Conservatives locally. One was Theresa May and the fact that the Conservatives nationally were not getting Brexit sorted out, and a lot of people were brassed off with that. And secondly, on a local basis, the incumbent, then Conservative council, was blamed, if you like, for having a local plan which sees more development. Now, without going into all of the ins and outs of that, the Conservatives lost seats for both of those reasons on Guildford Borough Council. But time moves on, and in a couple of years' time, I'm not going to predict the outcome of another election, but what I will say is that certainly myself and other Conservative colleagues will be doing our absolute best to hold to account the councillors from the Guildford Residents' Party and the Lib Dems, who now have a controlling majority on Guildford Borough Council. I think if you talk to the man or the woman in the street, they don't actually know that much in terms of who runs things. And I doubt if many people would actually say to you, oh yes, we have a Liberal Democrat residents coalition running Guildford Borough Council. Just as most people might be vaguely aware that Conservatives have, in Surrey, have a majority. But again, a lot of these things come back to what council's responsibilities are that they are obliged to carry out. And I will certainly be doing my bit to hold those who are in positions of power at Guildford Borough Council to account, just as I do, even though it's within my own party at Surrey, for decisions that are being made that affect people. So that's why I say, to a large extent, the party politics, yes, people get very het up about it, but in terms of individual local issues or individual subjects, most of the time I tend to look at these things, I hope, fairly objectively.
Keith, it's a long time since I've heard the phrase "brassed off." That's a good one. Thank you for talking to the Guildford Dragon News, Keith. Thank you very much.
That's okay. That's my pleasure. Thank you, Hugh.